Okay, so in this activity, we're talking about trophic structures and nutrient cycling. So in your lab, you built the Jenga, right, and looked at the trophic levels, and you had primary producers, and you had primary consumers eating the producers, and then secondary consumers. And so you noticed, how stable the organism or the community is based on how many primary consumers you have. And the reason for that is that the energy coming in from the sun, um, you're losing a ton of it, right? The gross primary productivity is only about, it's less than 1% of the total solar energy entering the atmosphere. And that's for a variety of reasons that you'll learn about in here. But then half of that that's coming in is used for the maintenance of the plant and lost to cellular respiration. And so the plant has very little left to offer. And so then when you have primary consumers eating the secondary consumers, go down to this, when you have primary consumers eating the primary producers, they're getting even less energy, maybe 20% that's transferred to them, and then up from there only 15%, and then up from there only 10%. And so at each level, you get less and less of the organisms because there's just not enough biomass to support, or not enough energy available to support them. So the biomass goes down as you go up in trophic levels. And going back to here, just some of these terms, right? Your primary producers have a primary productivity and then a gross primary productivity. A net primary productivity, which is what they pass on to those that eat them, and then the gross primary productivity is what they're actually gaining from the sunlight. Then your primary consumers are eating from this net primary productivity, and then they're passing on even less to the secondary consumers, and so you get this pyramid, so to speak. So how is this energy being transferred from one level to another? Well, they're being eaten, right? So the primary producers are doing photosynthesis. The primary consumers are eating them and extracting that energy from the bonds, like we learned in cellular respiration. And then likewise, secondary consumers are doing the same thing, extracting the energy from the bonds, but we get less and less of that available as we go up. But the building blocks, the carbons, the hydrogens, the nitrogens, the oxygens, the sulfur, they get passed back down in the system in very intricate ways. And so we went through two of those cyclings. We went through carbon and we went through nitrogen. And so in the carbon, we're looking at pools, which are where the carbon resides, and fluxes, which is how the carbon gets from one pool to another. And you were supposed to draw a carbon cycle. So here's just an example of a carbon cycle, right? So we've got it in the rocks, the lithosphere. We've got it in the oceans as dissolved carbon dioxide. We've got it in organisms, obviously, because they're carbon-based. Then we have it up in the atmosphere as CO2. And it's actually goes rocks, then ocean, then organisms, then atmosphere for carbon. And so then, you've got carbon that goes in and out of the water by diffusion. You've got carbon going in and out of organisms by photosynthesis into plants, and then respiration out of plants, or from a plant to a cow, and then the cow respirates out. As these things die, we get decomposition, and then we can dig this stuff up and burn it as combustion back into the atmosphere. And so this is kind of what you should have drawn, something like that. And then we did the same thing for nitrogen cycling. And nitrogen cycling is driven almost exclusively by bacteria. So plants use nitrogen. So they are assimilating nitrogen through their roots in a symbiotic relationship with bacteria and fungi that fix that nitrogen for them. And then they take it up through their roots. And then the organisms will eat the plants and get nitrogen that way. And then when organisms defecate or they die, even the plants, then the rest of it is taken over by bacteria. So bacteria can turn the waste and refuse products into ammonia or nitrates and nitrites. So you have nitrification or ammonification. You also have nitrogen that can fix right from the air, which they're rare. Not rare, there's a lot of them, but they're a special kind of bacteria that will fix nitrogen right from the air, which makes life on Earth possible, and they make it into ammonia. We have ammonium and ammonia. And then we have lightning can also fix nitrogen and turn it into these products in the soil. And then you have bacteria that turn it back into gas. So you can denitrify and nitrify. So that's denitrifying, takes it back into the gas. And then we have these nitrates and nitrites that get assimilated, like I said, into the roots of plants using symbiotic bacteria and fungi. So it's really mostly a bacterial process with the nitrogen cycle. So you should have drawn something kind of like this. And that's really all this was about. And we'll talk more about how we track these things in class.